Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Our next hot topic talks about inflation. Commodity prices likely to remain high amid persistent pressures. Nigeria's current GDP of $1 trillion reflects a lack of ambition and unrealized potential. Experts argue that the country's economy could grow fivefold with clear fiscal and monetary policies, strategic trade positioning, and leverage international intellectual property such as patents and trademarks. This approach, particularly through the competitive smile curve, could unlock significant opportunities for economic growth. To achieve this, the country needs fresh thinking, a new vision, and more precise objective for 2025. The policy framework must be agile, flexible, and predictive, allowing for continuous adjustments and periodic reviews. It is crucial to sequence actions in a measurable way, ensuring the effectiveness of policy implementations and facilitating dynamic, evidence-based decision-making. Success for Nigeria in 2025 requires careful planning, integrity, and consistency in leadership. The report emphasizes that while politicians may plan, it is the preparation and execution of brilliant leaders that determine the country's prosperity. As the nation moves forward, focusing on long-term strategic policies will be key to unlocking Nigeria's economic potentials and ensuring future success. Now, joining us this morning is Segun. Sopitan is the principal partner, Woodridge and Scott Consulting. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so I've just had a little monologue talking about how we can grow our economy and what we need to do. We need to plan, we need to execute. But so far, in your opinion, what are some key factors that are, driving this inflation and making the prices stay high? Because, of course, we thought that by now we would have been seeing the dividends of our labor and, our sacrifices. Because when the president first assumed office, there were certain reforms that had to come into play. And in putting those reforms in place, it was like, oh, you know what, just make the sacrifices now. You would get the dividends real soon. You'll see results really soon. But the result for the common man, of course, is to be able to afford whatever they want. But in this case, we're not really seeing that happen at all. Instead, every single day, prices of goods and services are going high every single minute and hour. So, but in your opinion, what are some key factors that are driving this? Why are we not seeing those, results yet?
The answer is complicated and complex, but I will try and make it as brief and concise as possible. The starting point is what you refer to, the reforms, the supposed reforms, right?
Yeah.
And long before this subsidy removal and exchange rate float management, the currency management policy reforms, when I say long, I mean many years. If you cast your mind back to even 2012, when the subsidy conversation really set the country, alight.
Yeah.
People like me, I in particular have said, it's not the way to go. You can't take subsidies out without doing certain things first. And that if you do, inflation will go out of control, right? And then I remember vividly Sanusi, CBN governor at that time, Sanusi, and others like him saying that no, that the inflation that will result from the removal of subsidy would only be temporary and that it would adjust itself because mainly its fuel prices are increasing and nothing else goes up. And that after a few months, the prices would, they called it equilibrium, to find balance. Well, here we are. Somebody has had the boldness, supposed, to do it, where Jonathan, backed down. Somebody has decided to do it. And look, this is now, almost 20 months into that policy. And inflation is still going up. Because, one, we took subsidies out, in one fell swoop, supposedly. So, in fact, what we did was not to take subsidies out, but to increase petrol prices. We did that in one fell swoop, and we saw an almost 300% increase in the price of petrol. Of course, now we're now trending at about 500%. It's a five-fold increase. And then at the same time, we floated our currency exchange rate. And again, the impact was immediate. It was instantaneous. So those are the primary factors driving inflation. There are a couple of other factors. There's the insecurity, in our food bed, in our food basket, that is preventing farmers and therefore constraining supply, of the badly needed food. So food inflation is a major component of this inflation. And then there's a money supply part where our money supply, has gone out of control. We're trading at well over 100 trillion naira now in money supply. And, coming back from just 2 years ago where it was about 56 trillion naira, you would understand that that kind of jump would have an impact on prices, which is why the CBN keeps hiking the MPR rates. So those are the challenges. Those are the major drivers of this inflation. So it then stands to reason that unless and until we fix those core fundamental causes of this inflation, it's going to continue. So when I look at the projections and the outlook predictions for 2025 by various policy analysts, and I see those that are optimistic and say things like inflation will go to 25%, I kind of shake my head, because in my opinion, inflation can actually come down to 10%. It can come down to single digits without any, to use the street parlance, mago on the part of the NBS, as we're beginning to hear now. We can actually get single digit inflation even before the end of this year. If the government is willing to adopt certain policy, very aggressive and unconventional policy actions, and if they're able to see those things through, then we can see inflation come down. But if we don't do those things, I'm sorry, the fundamental issues are still there, and inflation would only get worse. Maybe it won't increase as fast as it has done in the last year and a half, but it most certainly will not get better. So that's our reality today.
Of course, everybody wants inflation to come down so that it can be able to afford, so that people can have that spending power, really. But like you've said, anybody can just say inflation will come down. It could come down to about 10%, but some things need to be done. So what are those things in your opinion? First, do you even think that the government is doing anything to address the inflation that is happening right now for the common Nigerian? Because maybe for some of them, they do not spend their own money, so they don't really know what's happening in town. But do you think they're addressing it properly? And if you were to maybe just give an advice on how to go about it, because I would want to see inflation come down to 10%, to be honest. What are those things that we need to put in place?
Okay, so to the first part of your question, is government doing anything about it?
Yeah.
Apart from very tokenistic window dressing types of initiatives, the answer is no. So the approach of the government to the inflation question has been to give handouts to Nigerians, things that disappear, literally disappear, into the woodworks. They have made zero impact. All the, trucks of rice and all of that. Mm-hmm. When you do the numbers and calculate the number of indigent Nigerians we have, you'll see how completely ineffective those actions are. Other little initiatives, for example, there was the issue of the 150-day custom duty waiver window for certain imported food items.
Yeah, which has been started. Yeah.
Yes, it was never implemented. So I mean, those are the little things. And even if it had been implemented, it wasn't going to make any significant impact anyway. It would have done something, but it wouldn't have done enough. So apart from that, I've seen precious little. The things that need to happen they're fundamental. There are things that we're going to have to be audacious to approach. The CBN in particular has a big role to play, in all of this. And then the president, through his different ministers, also have a big role to play. So if you now, let me move to the second part of your question, what can we do? One, you look at the problem. There are two sides to this problem. There's the supply side and there's the demand side. Supply in terms of the goods and services. You know, the typical argument is what we're taught in secondary school, inflation is when too much money is chasing too few goods. So what you can do is you either reduce the too much money, reduce the quantum of money, that's money supply, CBN, monetary policy issues and all of that, or you increase the number of goods, right? So, or you do both. And I think in our own case, we have to do both because both the problem. On the cost push side, there's also a cost push side, which speaks to the fact that a lot of the things that we consume as a country are imported, and therefore the exchange rate is critically important in the overall inflation question. Now, for the exchange rate, let's start from there. On the exchange rate issue, you've got to fix the supply of forex into our markets. And what the CBN needs to do that is to open up the channels that will bring the inflows. I like the policy that the CBN recently released about non-resident accounts, non-resident Nigeria accounts, investment accounts, and normal current accounts, right? But as usual, they've not gone far enough. So the diaspora Nigerians, you know, are sending about 20 to 25 billion US dollars into Nigeria every year. But majority, most of that money, about 80 to 85% of that money does not affect supply of forex into the economy because the money doesn't come in. They find alternative channels because it's just simply too difficult. If you send the money into Nigeria, your relatives will not be able to access it easily. So the CBN needs to go a step further, allowing those accounts to open and allowing free operation of those accounts so that people can access those monies. If you do that, cheap, easy $20 billion gets into the economy and exchange rate will crash. So that's one thing that needs to happen. The other thing that needs to happen is that there is still a lot of other supply issues with foreign exchange, you know, the liquidity in the market. So the CBN needs to be bold and brave, relaxing of exchange controls. I looked at our exchange control policies, the foreign exchange memorandum of the CBN as amended in 2018. And if you look at that document, it is control upon control upon. It's so difficult to operate in that market, right? The CBN has got to look at how it's done in other parts of the world and adopt an easier stance so that foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and increase in multiples. You know, if money can come in easily and leave easily, the money will come in. You know, so that's on the one side. Now, on the other issues and the other things that are driving inflation, talking about the cost of the food, the availability of goods, food on the one hand, and then a lot of the other things that we're importing on the other hand. Rume, the answer is not as difficult as you might think. The reason we're constrained with food and every other thing, apart from security, the next culprit is infrastructure. It's road networks, rail networks, and electricity. Those three things can be addressed in record time by a government that is committed and that is approaching
well, there's the coastal highway.
Management mindset.
There's the Lagos-Calabar coastal highway.
Yes, the coastal. Yes, absolutely. And there's the Lagos-Abuja, you know, highway that we're hearing probably start in February as well.
Yeah.
The coastal highway, by the way, has run into some sort of log jam because at the end, in the first instance, it seems as if there was more at play than just that project. You know, the way the entire process was embarked upon was extremely suspicious. Very little transparency, very little due diligence. Yes, so it's difficult to think that that project will eventually make it and see the light of day. But if it does, it will be fantastic. But it won't be enough.
Okay.
You have to address, yes, you've got to, So you've got to address the infrastructure issue. You've got to address electricity. We need electricity to hit 20,000 megawatts. That's my magic number. We need to hit 20,000 megawatts before the end of this year, and it is not impossible.
Well,
if we'll see the difference.
Sorry to bust your bubble. I think there are so many firms that have even left our national grid and they're already generating about 6,500 megawatts for themselves. So I don't know if that's going to happen. But finally, in 30 seconds, in your opinion, do you think we'll be seeing some sort of relief really soon? Or how are we right now? This is 2025. What is the outlook for 2025 when it comes to inflation and, prices for commodities?
Everything is completely dependent on the actions that the government take in the next 2 to 3 months. If they take the right actions, if they allow, foreign exchange to flow freely into the country, and all of that, then we will be in for a very good ride where we'll even see prices come down. Not just inflation slowing down, but prices actually coming down. But
That's
if they don't, and I have my doubts, and if they don't, and I have my doubts, then I'm sorry, we probably will just see things remain at best. Best case scenario, in my opinion, is that things don't get much worse than they are now. I think that's our best case scenario. If we get something better.
Amen to that. Fingers crossed. I hope that things actually get better. All of the sacrifices we've made, I hope that it starts to pay off. And yes, we can have that purchasing power that we need and be able to afford anything that we want. Anyways, I want to say thank you so much for coming, Segun. It's been a pleasure having you on our show this morning. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day, sir. All right, we're speaking with Segun Sopitan, is a principal partner at Woodridge and Scott Consulting. And we've just been looking at inflation, commodity prices that still are high, even though, there's been persistent pressures. This is where we have to say goodbye on The Breakfast this morning. Thank you so much for having The Breakfast with me. My name is Rume. Paulson. I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Good morning.